welcome to the 42nd edition of SaaS Talks. I haven't actually read this book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, but I do believe that 42 is the answer to everything, or every question is what I've heard. So I guess this makes this a special episode. Like every time, I'll give a quick background to SaaS Talks, introduce the topic, introduce our anchor guests, and this will get going. So again, just to recap, the purpose of SaaS Talks is essentially to discuss a functional topic, something that you need while you're building your company in the software space. We every time we do invite a couple of anchors, mostly entrepreneurs who have been through those situations in the past, and we want to learn from what they have learned in their journey in the past. Um, Between Ritesh and I, who are the host here, we will set the tone with our initial questions, but the rest of it will be driven by the questions that the audience has. Just a few ground rules, which is that when you do have a question, please post it on the Q&A group and not on the chat group. Or just raise your hand and we can actually bring you in on the video itself. Second request is that when you do put a question, please do put the question on the topic that we are discussing today. If you have questions outside of it, please do send them to us separately. We'll be happy to actually think about the next topic of SaaS Talks around the topics that you are keen to discuss. With that, actually, the topic today is surprisingly something that we have not covered in the past in 40 plus episodes, which is many founders and mostly founders who are attending this, they start their companies when they're based in India. Most of them target US as a market, some target India, eventually pivot to US. At some point in the journey, they begin to realize that maybe at least one of the founders needs to move to the US. And it is a gradual process of thinking or coming to the terms that one of us needs to move to the US, and then they eventually make the move. And that move itself can be actually pretty disruptive for the company, for the founder as well. And they need to find their feet again as they make this transcontinental move. And the discussion today is just centered around what can one do to plan and execute their move to the US and how to make it the most productive, or I should say the least disruptive to building their company. With that, let me introduce the two anchor guests today. Sarthak Jain, he is the co-founder and CEO of Nanonets, which is essentially an application to convert unstructured data into structured data from documents. I've had actually the privilege of, I guess, knowing Sarthak pretty much since he graduated from IIT Gandhinagar, and a chance to invest in his first company. So he's a repeat founder in Qubit.io. And then he started Nanonets, I think 8 to 9 years back, all over again. I've seen him operate in India. I've seen him operate in the US. And again, Sarthak, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
With that, let me introduce Shri. Again, I've had the pleasure of knowing Shri for a long time. He's the co-founder and CEO of Rocketlane, which is a company in the professional services automation space. Shri is again a repeat founder as well, like Sarthak. He had earlier founded Conator. I'm forgetting, Shri, how far back that was, but I remember that you got acquired by Freshworks.
It was 2012 to 2015.
All right, 2012 to 2015. And Shri is a graduate from IIM Bangalore. And again, as you know, Ritesh and I we are both part of Stellaris Venture Partners. With that, we'll get going. And for both Sarthak and Shri, you can choose the sequence in which you want to answer this. But to set the context, actually will be very useful for everybody to know, when is it in your journey of your current companies did you decide to make the switch from India to US? And what was the driver/context? of that move?
Go ahead, Sri.
Okay, all right. So I think when we did our Series A, we were pretty small at the time. We did it fairly early. I think around 300K ARR at the time, and 2 months into launching our product. I think we made a soft commitment at that time, in a way, to the investors, etc. We indicated, hey, yes, one of us is gonna move to the Bay. We're gonna build a large global company. We know we need to have a presence in the US, and we will do that. That was soft commit. After we hit our first million, we hired our first sales leader in the US. And the next year, when we crossed, I think, 2.5 mil, that is when I'd started a process a little earlier of getting a L1 visa, and that came through in 2023. That's when we were at that 2.5 mil type stage, and that's when I actually made the move. Though I would say even the year before that, I probably spent close to 6 months in the US. So the real on paper move happened in 2023, but from 2022 I was spending a lot of time.
Got it. Fantastic. Sarthak, over to you.
Yeah, I have a slightly longer answer. So my previous company was based in India, and like Alok mentioned, he was an investor. I think through that journey, we quickly realized that, especially at that time, building like a deep technology company made more sense to move to the US. So we decided on, like, super early on, we applied to YC and we got in, and like we decided to move to the US. For some personal reasons, I had to move back. So 2017, we started the company. We actually started almost on day zero in the US, moved back. And then 2019, like almost the company was paused for a bit. And then 2019, moved back to the US to sort of resume. And then 2020 COVID hit, and I was stuck in India at that time. And then again, for the next 1.5 years, was in India, moved back again. So gravity sort of pulled me in to India a couple of times, but have made the move. But tried to start this company primarily based in the US.
Got it. Maybe Sarthak, we'll just continue with you initially here. You did say that, look, after doing your first company, now in the second company, you realize that the way to build a deeper tech or a tech company, you would just rather be in the US, right? And of course, while for personal reasons or COVID, you had to be in India in your second innings this time. But what was the thought process to why is it important for you to be just there? And did you make that call for both the founders, or was it a single founder who made that choice? And how do you decide which one should be there, which one should be in India?
Yeah. So very funny story. Post like our first company's acquisition, we were we were sailing on a houseboat in Kerala, and we were like, this is so pointless. We should quit our jobs and try a startup again and move to the US. And there were three of us who sort of started the previous company, and we said, oh, let's move. And then one of them was like, no, I can't move. I'm about to get married and my wife is not going to move. So he decided not to. So the other two people started the company together. Like that's how it happened. So both of us decided to move to the US from sort of almost day zero. My co-founder's been in the US mostly since then. I was a bit back and forth. And in terms of the reason, I think one of the big reasons is sort of your early customers define the referenceability for the next set, and you'll hustle your way to your first customers. And if you acquire a few, I think it's true in both B2B and B2C, which is if you acquire your first few customers and they're not referenceable to your eventual market, I think that becomes one of the biggest hurdles. And then second is your early team, which is if you're building your early team in a particular geography, those are sort of going to be key people that you want driving the company forward. I'd say for those would be my two primary reasons to recommend somebody moving to the market they eventually want to be in.
And Shri, in your case?
Yeah, I think the last time we did a startup, I used to be in Bangalore and Delhi very often. Ritesh, I know I've come and bugged you in the past for like intros into portfolio companies, etc. So we were based in Chennai, but we were always traveling to Bangalore and Delhi. This time we thought, I mean, between the two ventures, I spent 4.5 years at Freshworks and saw how global a product it was, how there was very early traction from everywhere from Australia to the US, wasn't dependent on Indian customers as a market, and it was so much easier to get US customers to pay and see value in a product. So this time we said, hey, if we want to build a global company, there's no point going to Bangalore every week. Either sell from India or go to the US. Those are the only two things we're going to do. And that's what I think was the first trigger. And we said, okay, we are going up market fairly quickly. We had this approach to building the business where we said, hey, we want to look bigger than what we are at every stage in the journey. We want to build a brand from early. That was one of the things which I felt, having been part of the Freshworks journey from like 18 million to 230 million at Freshworks. I felt Freshworks built a brand too late, and still isn't very recognized in a lot of places in the US. I thought, hey, for our market, I want to make sure that we are recognized. So we first started going there for events and like putting up big booths and having a big presence. And whenever we went, we would actually go meet customers as well. We could feel that it was helping us advance those, partnerships, customer conversations significantly if we forced an in-person meeting. So this was after COVID. Most prospects also did not, they weren't coming back to office regularly, but we would sort of impose on them. And we knew that we could see some things change when we got together with them in person. It gave us more opportunity than like, oh, the Zoom 30 minutes got over and you're like just onto something else, right? And we needed that, I felt, in like the bigger partnerships that we were forging. That's why we started building a team in the US early, and I moved there as well. Among the three of us, it was like one of us needs to be there, the three co-founders. And usually whenever it comes to, hey, okay, we don't know if any of us wants to do it, it becomes my role. Whatever everyone else doesn't want to do is done by me. So that was how we decided. And, I think though our context is still little outdated, I feel today people are landing in the US first thing, right? Like before anything else. And I think, I myself, when I moved, I didn't move to the Bay Area. I moved to Utah. I was there for close to 2 years. But this year I made another move. I moved to the Bay Area. I feel the intensity in SF and the density of AI startups. And I think none of us are building SaaS companies anymore. I think the podcast needs to be renamed. The series needs to be renamed to AI Talks as well. But yeah, I think if you're building an AI company, better be at the center of it all. There is so much that comes out of discussing things with people around you, and that density is very, very, incomparable. Ambition, the intensity, everything is something else. I think you need to be there to experience it, and it sort of fuels your ambition also in a way. No lag between what's happening and what you're hearing. That's why the second move, I think I moved to the US twice, once to US, once to real US.
Note to everyone, please do begin to put your questions on the Q&A panel, and we'll start picking from those questions. Sorry, Ritesh, over to you.
No, not at all. I wanted to unpack something that Sri said. Sri, you gave almost two different reasons to move to the US, and timing aside, you mentioned one being in a way product discovery and problem discovery. that as you talk to potential customers, as you talk to the ecosystem, you learn what to build. And the second was the GTM itself, where the customers would be a lot more open and would listen to the pitch a lot more closely, when you're doing the meetings in person. I wanted to pose this question to the both of you as to which between these is the primary driver of the move, and which can still be done from India for different kinds of companies.
Yeah. For us, I would say problem discovery happened remote for most part because it was during COVID. We started in March 2020, right? Just as COVID was starting. We were traveling initially, meeting few folks, but then all of that got cut. So we were forced to do it online. And I think we were able to do that well enough because we weren't like selling and doing problem discovery. We were very clear with people that we don't even have a product, so we won't be asking you to buy something at least for the next year. So don't worry about spending time with us. This is not like a bait to, turn it into a sales conversation. So that helped do it remotely. And I think we have a lot of learnings on doing that remotely. We continue to do it remotely, I would say. GTM is where we are in person. We are trying to build a brand. We are trying to be present on the ground, meet people, spend more time with them beyond like just the 30-minute pitch that we often get.
Got it. We are beginning to have actually quite a few questions which are beginning to come. And maybe Sarthak, I'll ask a question from Raghav from Wellplay to you and modify it slightly. His question is that how did your respective investors react when you made the decision to make a base in US for the first time? In your case, you were actually going back and forth multiple times. So curious what the investor reaction is when you have moved back to India and actually moved back to US both.
We were sort of lucky that we only had angel investors post seed, so like not too many people cared enough to even know where I was. But I'd say that generally investor sentiment is always going to be, I don't know about Alok and Ritesh, but generally it's going to be that why aren't you in the US, and everybody's going to push you in the direction of the US unless there's a very strong reason why you need to be in India. And sorry, maybe just also responding to the previous question, which is, I think there are two types of companies, which is if you wanted, like take the example of Windsurf and Cursor. I think Cursor can still be built out of India. I don't think Windsurf can be built out of India. If you're doing any kind of B2B enterprise sales, in terms of product discovery, I think if you need to understand more from the customer, I think you need to be near the customer. If you are yourself the customer or you have deep insight into the customer, I think it's fine to build from anywhere. If you need to do in-person sales or any sale above, let's say, $20,000, you need to be where the customer is. If you're okay with like a PLG-ish motion or selling into SMBs, I think then you can build the company from anywhere.
Ritesh, I have a follow-on question. Actually, why don't I ask my follow-on question to Sarthak? And it's combined with a comment that Sri had also made earlier. Let's actually take two kinds of companies. One which is selling to sort of the real bottom tier in terms of size of customers. So classical SMB. And for the sake of argument, I'm just going to make up an ACV, which is that it's selling in the 3 to 5K ACV range, right? So these are, and you are executing it via remote sales. Therefore, your sales team can be based out of India. Versus you are selling to slightly larger customers, and Sri had used the word upmarket or larger customers. Trying to understand again that if you were selling only to the bottom tier of customers, therefore, is it still important to be able to, is it still important to move to the US for the founders?
I'd say if you're selling into the bottom tier and you really feel there is a cost arbitrage and advantage, I think it's much better than to be in India, because then at that point it doesn't really matter. I think only then time zone matters, where you should be willing to stay up till like 2, 3 in the morning if you're also selling into the West Coast. So depending on your product stack. Otherwise, I don't think it particularly matters for you to be in the US unless you want to understand your customer more closely, in which case, again, you can make trips to the US frequently.
Very interesting. So this is a sort of qualifier to the product versus GTM question that when the sales motion is more PLG, it's really problem and product that is the reason to spend time in the US and not so much GTM. Rishabh has an interesting question. For companies that start out in India and have some India revenue initially, and then move to one of the founders moves to the US, and the question is, what happens to the India revenue at that point? Does that revenue take a hit? Are you able to simultaneously manage both geographies? If let's say the CEO moves, who takes care of the India part of the business?
I would in fact say the biggest disadvantage we have as a company starting in India is we think, okay, there is some customers here that we can access. We do that. And now we are like in this multi-time zone, sad world where we're like, oh, I have a call at 4 a.m. I also have a call at, 4 p.m. I also have a call at 10 p.m. Right. So that's something which I see like a US founder doesn't have to deal with, which I think is as a 40-year-old, it's much harder to do this multi-time zone thing. So I would say if you already have India customers, maybe it's worthwhile understanding, how big this is in the grand scheme of things. I don't know, right? Like if hey, we have 20 million revenue in India, then yes, you better get someone to manage it if you're moving. Maybe if you had a sales leader locally, you can elevate them into like a overall sale and post-sale leader for the region, give them the, manage all the revenue versus new revenue only. And you focus on building the US market and hiring over there, etc. Versus if you had, let's say, hey, I have 300K of revenue in India, then I would say let it go. Don't worry so much about it. Let it go in the sense you don't have to go and say, hey, you're no longer my customer, but do your best effort over there is what I would do initially. While more because you can't balance both and do justice.
Yeah.
Not because India revenue is not needed, but I think you want the US revenue. That's why you're making the move. So focus on that.
So we had the interesting choice to make. We were at about, I think, 1.6, 1.7 million, mostly from India, from 2017 to 2019. This is what we built. And then we almost decided to stop focusing on that entirely. We churned like 1.7 million of ARR starting from zero in 2019, just because there was no way to replicate the same kind of motions from India to the US. And I think the biggest disadvantage was any customer who we mentioned was like no referenceability. I remember this one very weird incident where there was an investor we were talking to. This was maybe one of the largest companies in India, and they were an investor in that company. And I said, we have this company as a customer. And they said, yeah, but nobody in India is a sophisticated buyer, so it doesn't matter. And I was like, that's your portfolio company. No, it doesn't matter at all. So I'd almost say that you're going to put in maybe 8, 10, 12 months of effort in acquiring your early customers. It's going to be the same amount of effort if you acquire Citibank or if you acquire HDFC. So you might as well acquire Citibank instead, if that's going to be your eventual customer base.
Fair. I'll take a question from Manish of Waterbridge. And for those listening, Manish is an investor as well. So, and I'm actually also going to broaden his question. But his question is that, look, he has seen 4 founders move to the US. And two were very successful. One was a big failure, and one sort of somewhere in the middling zone between the two. And while yes, success has a lot to do with your hiring skills, building go-to-market, etc., but one of the key contributors to your success and both happiness is your ability to build a professional support group or a network in the US, right? You're going from one continent to another continent, different culture, different place, a different expense structure, if I may say so as well. And in India, you have a lot of support to you, but as you go to a completely different country, that professional support can be very critical to your success. And two parts question. One is, do you agree, disagree? And number two, if you are not someone who grew up in that country or studied or been there for long years in the past, how do you build that professional support group in the US as you move?
So I'm not sure I understood what exactly is meant by professional support group. Is it just your, peer group and folks you can engage with, learn from, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, Sri, I think at least as I'm hearing, and Manish, if you want, we can pull you in into the video as well here. Is that in addition to the regular business that you do need to reach out to people for advice, people who help you when the chips are down, when you are tackling logistical issues also in that country. In India, you have a lot of support for all those things. But how do you create that support for yourself in that country?
I'll share a few things that have worked for me. So I moved for the first time in my 40s to the US. Didn't have anyone in the place I moved. I moved to Utah. I didn't even move to the Bay Area. That's the only city I've ever been to where there's no one I knew from before, like zero. And a month before I moved, I started reaching out to other founders in the region, like cold connect on LinkedIn with a message that said, "Hey, I'm a founder moving to Utah. I would love to connect and build my network locally." That's all I said, right? Like, I'm trying to establish a new network. I'd love to connect with you. A lot of people connected, but a few people connected and were very, helpful as well. One of the folks, I later got to know, he was like father-in-law of Varun of Clay. But
Oh,
there's this like American guy who's like very actively comes and takes me out for dinner the first week I land there. When my parents visit, he bakes bread and brings it home. And it's like a very different experience for me that someone is so welcoming. But what I do is, one, I did this kind of reach out and I made some good connects from there. I met a local VC, Ravi of Elevation, and his team connected me with some other founders locally as well, saying, "Hey, get in touch." That helped me make some good friends who had made the move before, etc., could guide me on things. Our own angels who were in the Bay Area still had inputs, advice on, "Hey, this, do that," and so on. Drivetrain, Alok gave me his like, "Hey, here are the first 20 things I did when I landed," sort of a thing. So all of that was super helpful as I got there. But I think the other big thing I rely on is local community. So wherever I am, I'm very actively a community builder myself in a way. Like I'm a volunteer with SaaS Boomi, volunteer with Funda, which is like a new Bay Area community that is super helpful for people in the region. But there's also a Utah-based community, Silicon Slopes community, that I volunteered to be part of. So when you volunteer and you're part of something, you meet other people who are more of the giving kind, and I think that helps as well to build your local network and get help where you need it.
fantastic. Yeah.
Maybe I'll give a slightly different perspective on this, which is I'm maybe more of an introvert than Shri. I see Shri at every single event, and he's like really outspoken there as well, and super popular. I'm not that kind. When I think when we were both moving And we have some maybe common investors and some people know. So people used to ask me, why are you moving to the Bay Area? It's so expensive. Look at Shri, he's moved to Utah instead, and it's much cheaper. Maybe you should consider that. And I was like, no, I know more people in the Bay Area. And I don't think it'll be so easy for me to find people. So I'd say generally people are super helpful and welcoming, but if there are other people already, it's definitely useful to rely on them. Like a lot of people, even Sri mentioned, he probably knew them from before. There are always people who move. There are super helpful people who will connect you. So leveraging existing networks, even if you know one or two people, that's usually enough to make a move. And if the data Alok said was that two founders moved out of 4 and they were successful, I think he's already beat in terms of hit rate.
Indrayani has an interesting question, which is in the sort of pre-move phase, that how effective it is to visit the US frequently rather than relocating full time, and how does it impact things like product discovery, customer engagement, and actually team building in the US if you are building a team there.
I would say super valuable. I would make 3 trips a year, each time like 1 or 2 months at a time, set up a lot of meetings going there. I think when you tell people, hey, I'm in your city, can we catch up for coffee? It's a much more, people are open to doing that versus when you're even living there. Like, okay, someone is visiting and asking me, they'll make time for them. So I've seen that work out from getting together with people. And I think when you meet in person, it does open up something more for especially larger prospects. It's easier for them to trust you when they learn more about you than what they can on a call. So that way, customer discovery and progressing deals, both it helps, because discovery as well, when you do it in person, I think, you go beyond just you have a list of questions you need to go to within a period of time. You can walk their office together and get more insight on who cares about what, and better lay of the land. So you're developing an understanding of the persona, the ICP, all of that beyond what you typically do. And I think the trips, like we would also do sort of meetups when we go wherever we travel. Okay, I'm in New York, I'm going to do a meetup of professional services leaders in the region. And we do it more casually, right? It's not like there is a panel discussion and something else happening. We do it just as let's get together, open up some very high level topics, get people's sense on those things so that people feel it's useful for them professionally, and then just meet and learn one-on-one from people within that group. So I think those things have been super useful. And from a hiring perspective, if you have this mindset of, hey, I'm always sort of in that, I don't know, they say always recruit, but hire when you need to, or the reverse. I don't know the technicality of that, but essentially you're like always trying to woo people to want to work with you. So whenever you find someone who's good, do that. And for our ICP, we sell to professional services and implementation leaders. I would, even for that function, I would go meet people. I'm also gauging, hey, is this someone good for us to work with? Very often they would say, hey, whenever you're expanding in the US, keep me in mind. I love what you folks are doing. So it also builds affinity in that audience for us because they see you as how you are as a company beyond just your product. I had so many of our customers apply to want to work with us, and it's hard to say no to them, but it's you have a pipeline and you can tap into that pipeline saying, hey, do you know any other person in this role, etc. as well. So it becomes easier for you to hire. I think being there in region, meeting people who some of our angel investors tell us, hey, meet this person, they're really good for the future. So you're building pipeline for the future, even if you're not hiring today.
I don't know, Sarthak, any other perspective on this?
No, I think she answered well, nothing else.
I want to maybe then explore a reverse perspective also, right? So far in the discussion, we are discussing why it's important to be in the US because you want to be closer to customers, initial references. But for most of the entrepreneurs on this call, and I'm assuming for both of you as well, bulk of your teams, I'm assuming, are still in India, right? And a lot of your leadership, whether that might be engineering, sometimes customer success, demand gen, lots of different areas, your leadership will be in India as well. So while you do optimize, I guess, your customer interface by being in the US, what happens to your engagement with your own leadership and the rest of the team back in India? And how do you continue to stay to be a relevant leader for that group after you have moved to the US?
Maybe I'll answer that. We have a large percentage of our team in India, and sort of bridging the India-US gap is always an active effort. Time zones never match really well. So there's a lot you have to do to be present sort of in both locations, because you can't abandon one or the other, and having senior leadership is critical. So maybe if it's frequent trips, maybe it's entire company offsites, it's scheduled Zoom calls where like you don't want people to stretch on both ends of the day. So maybe US mornings, India evenings, make it have some rituals where teams are collaborating, fly people from both sides, flying teams from the US into India and India into the US as well. So you're not working with a face that you've just seen on Zoom, but you're working with a real person, and ensuring almost everybody having met the other team members is critical. Having respect and understanding that there's going to be a lot of cultural differences. Trying to educate people on all of those, I think it's an active effort. And then you should sort of ask the question, what is the advantage you're getting out of it? And I think one of the biggest advantages is that, let's say, hiring engineering talent in the Bay Area is close to impossible for an early stage startup, or you should have raised like $1 billion. So either try raising $1 billion if you want to have that advantage, then put in all of this effort. So you'll sort of have to pick your own poison.
Shri, any thoughts on how you guys have managed that?
Yeah, it's been very hard. My approach while in Utah was wake up at 4:30 and start getting on calls 4:30 to 6, and 6 to 7 do something else, like get ready to go to office. We used to go to office, like be in office at 7. But moving to Bay, that meant do it at 3:30, which I was not gonna do. So shifted it to night. I keep some time to connect with India team. Now I would admit, I think now that we have more leaders in the company, it has become less of a, hey, my time directly going to people. But I do like connecting with the team. I do 3 trips a year to India now, which each time I'm here for a month and a half. Okay. So roughly spend 4 months in India, 8 months in the US. And I think it's needed sometimes. I feel it gives a morale boost to have like a invigorating conversation with some of our top performers, recognize them in some way with one-on-ones with them, etc. With leaders, I have like enough of a connect on a regular basis anyway. It's harder for me in general because I'm usually like a 0 or 1 person. Either I'm like, hey, I know this person is doing their thing, I'm like completely leaving them to do their things, or I don't have that trust yet and I'm like fully doing things along with them. That makes it slightly harder to have like that right mix of how I'm engaging with team members. But we have 2 co-founders in India. That also helps a fair bit to manage things. It doesn't always need me. Only the GTM side I work with more closely, and I've always told them, any call you want me to be on, add me in. If you want to connect one-on-one, connect. Weekends, I keep it open for them. Anyone wants to connect.
We take a question from an anonymous attendee. Interesting question that in your early GTM journey in the US, what were some of the shockers that you received, or what was some feedback that you received that stung at the time, that was negative at the time, but helped you operate better as an Indian founder who relocated to the US?
So I have a funny story. The first event we did in the Bay Area, the feedback I got, the negative feedback I got after it was like 80 people attended the event was, oh, you didn't have ice for the water. And that was apparently the discussion of chatter in a LinkedIn group that we didn't do a good job of hosting. We didn't even have ice. From the next event, I made that my first slide. That hey, if there is no ice in the water is the biggest problem. I'm happy that we've done a good job. At the same time, give us feedback, even if it is about ice in the water. We want to learn. We are new in the market. We're learning. So if we make a mistake, tell us.
Like I remember this one customer where we were primarily selling over Zoom at that time. I was still in India. This is a US customer, and I didn't usually tell people that fairly small team, so I didn't usually tell people I'm the founder. I just said that I'm one of the sales reps. And I remember he asked me, "Your product and all of that is great, but I'm not going to buy from somebody sitting in India. Can you connect me to one of your salespeople in the US?" And that was a shocker. So I think one of the things that people tend to think but don't say out loud is that does color, skin, etc. matter? And I don't think that matters at all. But where are you geographically present, especially in the sales process, I think is critical, because they want somebody who they can call up, talk to, who understands nuances there. So I think that's particularly important.
I'll add to that. I think this one is important for all those who are currently selling from India into the US. I've seen Freshworks make this mistake. I heard from a friend who is in the US who I had recommended to buy Freshworks. At the end of the cycle, he said, hey, I didn't feel good about buying from this company because there was someone sitting in a dark room and talking to me. I mean, it didn't feel like I was talking to a real person. So one of the things we did early on while we were selling from India initially was, okay, do all our team members have good lighting, good cameras, know that they need to turn on the video every time they're, presenting themselves well. We have great Zoom backgrounds for everyone. People enter the Zoom meeting. There is like a Zoom waiting room video, which, it's our Series B rap song now. I don't know if you all watched it. You should.
Yep.
So it gives a very different energy getting into that meeting with you versus if someone is like, oh, my video is off, apologies, today I'm not able to come on camera, or you come on camera and it's like a dark setting, and all of that matters.
Great. I'm going to pick up a question from Rohit Dev. But before I ask that, I noticed that Nitin, who is one of the attendees, you had raised your hand. If you still want, we can actually pull you in. And apologies, we were not able to do that earlier. We can pull you into the video. But in the meantime, I want to take Rohit Dev's question, which is that usually when you do move to the US, your costs are going to go up. I mean, just for you as a founder, what you are getting compensated, that'll go up, some associated expenses with it. And I'm also assuming the reason you are moving to the US is that you will probably make some other first few hires in the US as well. Is there actually two-part question? One, is there sort of a minimum or an appropriate compensation that you would recommend for an early stage company founder when they are in the US? And for the sake of argument, we'll take Bay Area as the example here, because I recognize that cost might be different in Utah versus a Bay Area as well. And second part of the question is, what's the minimum cash in the bank for the company that you think needs to be there before one attempts to make this move in the first place?
I'm very, very conservative. So I would say if you have at least 3 years of runway, budgeting for your presence over there. That is when I will make the move, but that's me. And in terms of comp, I would say early stage, somewhere in the 120 to 150K is appropriate if it's just like, hey, cover your expenses type of a thing, right? You haven't raised too much money, etc. And it also depends on, honestly, your like family situation. If you're, maybe this won't be enough at all if you have like a, have kids and larger family. For me, as a one person, I think that is more than enough to survive. And I don't think we do market salary when we move there. We do like survival salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar, like the 120, 150K number, try figuring things out, which is, let's say, if two founders moving there, what is the time that it's going to take you to figure out that's the amount of money you should have in the bank. If you're already running a company that's working and you're thinking about making the move, then I'd be way more conservative, and then I try to have a lot more money in the bank. So yeah, like 3 years of runway sounds like a good idea. You're going to have lifestyle inflation pretty quickly, so that 120K can, make you run for like 6 months, but like you won't be able to survive on that for like 3 years. So you should assume lifestyle inflation is going to happen, especially if you're married with kids, etc. Then like the sky's the limit, because those numbers eat up at you very, very, very quickly. If you look at the new H1B guidelines that came in, I think they said like even 200K is not in the Bay Area is not enough to reach level 4 or something. So yeah, lifestyle inflation really is a thing.
Got it. A number of questions on visas and the regulations around moving. And while some of the questions might be very specific, I wanted to sort of generalize them and ask about how difficult it has been, both in the initial period when you haven't moved, you're on a B1, B2 visa. What do you see immigration pitfalls in actually doing sales and BD on a B1, B2 visa, or spending 6 months or 6 months over a year on that visa? And then when you do move, just how much time and how much expense should one budget for the immigration process itself, the visa process itself?
For me, I think visa process took somewhere like 12K to 18K. I don't remember exactly. And the going in, coming out, I already had a B1, B2. Yes, there would be every alternate time there would be harder questions asked. Where are you going to stay? This, that. But in general, I would say if you timed it around an event, like a conference, hey, I'm coming for this conference over here. That was in general like the safest type of answer for me. That's always worked out well. I also discovered the first time whole like 7 of us traveled together for a big event. One person just walked past everyone else into another queue. We were like, hey, look at that idiot. Why is he doing that? Like a teammate. So we were making fun that, crazy guy, why is he going the wrong queue? But he had something called a global entry visa.
Yeah.
And apparently you can just pay like $150 and get that done if you're making frequent trips, and it avoids the whole questioning because you don't need to meet an immigration officer anymore. I just got it done. I'm going to experience it for the first time on this trip back, but this Sunday. But yeah, I would say if you're frequently flying, maybe just do that global entry, GEP, global entry program.
That's right.
I'd say technically, like the definition is vague, but technically you aren't allowed to do any work on a B1, B2. So I don't know where on the line sales falls, so I won't make any statements about that. But generally, I think a good idea, go on a B1, B2. There are a bunch of different visa options, which are relatively easy these days for you to get a visa. So I don't think visa is as big a challenge as it used to be, but I still feel founders who are immigrating are going to spend a lot more time on the admin of it post as well. Not like, oh, you just moved, you're done. You are going to have some or the other visa issue for the entire duration of your company. So prepare for that. It's going to take up, let's say, maybe 10% of your time in some way or the other. There are a bunch of things. Can your spouse work or not? So you have to figure all of those things out. So you're going to almost be operating on hard mode where 10% of your time is going to be taken away. So just budget for that. And it never ends with, oh, like I got a visa to work in the US. It's a constant struggle. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, for me, like a founder's office person or finance leader has helped a fair bit in all the document stuff. Go with like a firm that another founder recommends to do that processing. For me, someone recommended Serotela for the L1 process, and we got that done in like 3-4 months. I made a mistake in filling a form that set us back by another 3 months, but yeah.
Got it. Got it. I want to move to the recruiting question. And again, I'm going to ask that in two parts. One of the reasons that many people have told me in the past as to why a founder needs to move to the US is that it's very hard to hire quality talent in the US unless one of the founders himself or herself is there, right? Good quality people will not be joining you in that country. And I would love to know your thoughts on that, whether that's true or not true, because Shri, in your case, you did say that you hired somebody in the go-to-market function even while you were actually in India. My second part of my question is that even as you do move, what were the first few hires or in which functions? And the reason to ask that question also is that I've heard some people hire people in customer success because they have a large customer. They feel they just need to make that customer happy first. There are people who have done it in product marketing. And of course, the obvious one is that you hire in sales, etc. So I'm curious to know what are the first few kinds of people you hired after you moved there?
So we hired a sales leader before I moved there. And I would say we already had good momentum. We had good logos. We had like Clary, Kata, etc. as customers even before that. So, and we had a good rap song in that intro video. All of that creates an impression in the person, right? So when they first meet you, they already feel there is something superlative about the company. Then I think it doesn't matter whether you're already there or not, but they want to know that you are making a move. If you're saying, hey, I'm always in India, I think a sales leader in the US will be worried because, if the connect is very transactional or if it feels that way, then they would fear that first thing that will happen to them is like their job will get cut one fine day without any thoughts, versus you're in the region, you're working with them, you're working together to build success, etc. So I would say that's for high quality people. I think they will want to see you as a US company for them to join. So what does that mean? I have US investors, I have like a US presence that I've planned. I want to grow the team there. All that, sharing your vision for the US team is important. Meeting in person is invaluable. I would highly recommend that as you make even the first hire. Our initial team was sales leader, 1 AE, 2 BDRs. So we decided to hire BDRs in the US because we wanted to ensure that it is not name, not accent, not something else, but we are only testing our messaging. Otherwise, I would have always had the doubts around why is this not working if it didn't work, right? So
interesting.
And we thought if it works, we can scale it from India as well. I feel there are functions where you get a different kind of talent in the US because the been there, done that is more over there than here. For example, I think BDR leadership, I feel they have very different kinds of BDR leaders compared to India because they've seen, for example, calling motion, etc. I feel they've been more successful in the US. In India, still, there are very few companies that have succeeded in outbound calling to set meetings, etc. Maybe there is also partnerships which you may want to hire for in the
Yeah.
US. It helps to have that network already, be local. That's one more reason I feel, being in the US, being in the Bay Area will make a difference, is the kind of ad hoc meetings that lead to something for you, right? Like the serendipity is something I believe in. Put yourself out there. So that also helps. And I think even customer success leadership, like post-sale leadership, I don't want to call it customer success anymore because I think the function is under a lot of, turmoil. Post-sale leadership, I feel there is a certain maturity, intensity, ability to handle like customers without anxiety, which leaders there have, which I feel new leaders emerging in India don't have that yet. So those are roles that immediately come to mind. As very honestly, I think even performance marketing, like demand gen / growth, in a way, the archetype in India versus the type you find in the US, I think is very different. One is very, very experimental. I will do all kinds of experiments and get to success, versus one is, oh, I know Google Ads really, really well. So, yeah.
I sort of agree with you in the sense that I don't think hiring is very difficult, especially if you fundraising news, becomes easy to hire. But what I feel is the challenging part, you have to hire them almost every day post. The hiring market is particularly competitive. They're going to keep getting job offers. You want to keep them engaged. You want to keep them motivated. And doing that where, they're the solo person operating and everybody else in the company is somewhere else, I don't think that works. So being there, meeting them, having other team members there, I think that becomes critical. And then let's say once you hire a salesperson, you need sales engineering. Once you hire people, they need product support. So building multiple functions there becomes important, because one individual cannot accomplish anything if they're just solo.
Got it. Ritesh, over to you for the last question.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask a sub question to this one, which has been raised by Karan, which is how effective are the so-called BD partners, which are not full-time sales executives for the company, but they work with multiple companies as to provide initial sales momentum. And I would add two sub-questions to that one. One, just how effective is it? I mean, do they actually understand the product of the company, understand the business of the company enough to be able to sell effectively to get you your first few clients? And two, is there a limitation in terms of getting feedback back from them that goes back into the product and the problem discovery? Um, uh, you know, because I guess a lot of founders think of that as a cost-effective and easy option to begin with. But does it really work?
Tried only once. Had a BD partner in, between US and Philippines, making calls, setting up a lot of meetings. No, none of them will turn up for the actual meeting. The calendar of the AE will be ruined. It led to like a 70K settlement at the end because of like an argument dispute around like when the thing actually terminates. There was no way for us to terminate the contract. Like the only contract that I didn't send to our legal, got stuck this way. But all sorts of problems. And I listened to one of the calls because I sort of said, hey, something is going wrong here. I engaged with someone on that team, got access to one of the calls. Then I said, never doing this again, because it was just like brute force someone, without any context. The prospect is saying, no, I don't want a meeting. And this person is like, is 9 p.m. okay? Is that whatever, right? Like it was a crazy call. And I said, okay, I can't do this to my brand. Never again outsourcing. And these people are also protective of how they're setting the meetings. Don't want to share it saying, hey, this is our IP, our approach is our IP, etc. I think if you have a very, very good formula and someone you already know or trust is vouched for by someone else, then you can potentially try that. But you can't discover the formula working with someone like this. You need to first discover the formula before you hand it to someone.
Yeah.
I'll just rephrase what Sri said, which is you should have done the first set of sales yourself. if you don't feel like you can do it yourself, you probably need a co-founder who can help you with that. And then once you have the formula, you have done it yourself, you've done maybe some cold calling yourself, then if you think of scaling with some partner, maybe that's possible. But some partner helping you discover I haven't ever seen that work.
Great. I know we are above the time here, so we will have to make a stop. Apologies to those people whose questions still remain unanswered. But Shri and Sarthak, thank you so much for joining us for this today. And I hope this was useful for the audience. As always, keep emailing us with the topics that you are interested in. We'll be happy to schedule those in the future. And Shri, we take your feedback that we need to think about the title of the whole series itself at this point in time. So thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.